A Hat in Time is one of the best platformers I've played in recent years. From the amazing and vibrant landscapes to the silly but memorable characters, this game just leaks charm in every aspect. However, one thing I found quite amazing about the game is how it handles the player's skills. They build upon each other level after level. Not only do the bosses in this game add a fair challenge as you play, but they aren't just a bland copy and paste of the same thing over and over again. It gives this game a greater sense of uniqueness. Even now, I will always remember Snatcher, as he was hands down my favorite boss in the game. A personal bias aside, I want to go over how this game does platforming bosses right. This video will be covering the bosses as if it was your first time playing through the game, not the EX bosses from the Seal the Deal DLC. One last thing, this entire video is a big spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled, click off now. Alright, good. Now without further delay, let's start the boss rush. Just after we beat the first level, we can jump right into a boss battle. The first boss we encounter is found in Act 2 of Chapter 1, Barrel Battle. This battle isn't particularly hard. On the contrary, it's probably one of the easiest battles in the game. But that's the beauty about it. It doesn't throw something insane and overpowered at you as you're getting your feet wet. Instead, it gives you a testing ground of sorts to catch your bearings. It gives you the same goons you've just beat back in the first level, so you already know how to beat them. While you begin your assault, you realize that now you're locked into a 2D path for the fight. For a newcomer, this is a fantastic thing, as it's an easy way to help them get situated with combat during boss battles in the game, and showing how different mechanics may arise for the occasion. However, while the beginning eases the player in, the battle begins to increase in difficulty, with a barrage of barrels you need to avoid coming right at you. Even with this, it doesn't go crazy. It has the first 5 barrels be telegraphed enough to avoid, and the next 5 barrels only need a small skill ceiling to avoid. After the player dodges the onslaught, they are met with a familiar sight of a goon and take him down just as they have before, completing the first battle. While the last fight might have been more basic, we gain access to another battle in Act 4's Down with the Mafia. It's here we are introduced to our first true boss battle. After some small segments of familiarity with platforming and combat, we fight the Mafia boss. Again, he isn't extremely difficult, but this raises the bar for the player as the lead will put everything they know to the test. A cutscene ends with the Mafia boss shot panning out through the whole stage. The player starts the battle center stage with the Mafia on their right. The cutscene helps to establish where the threat is, and we look at him. What is he? Oh my god, he's coming right for me! We the player can see that he's coming straight at us, and just like we learned back in Acts 1 through 3, we can jump to avoid his attack and hit him. We can also see that he has a blue outline when he's vulnerable, giving the player insight that he's ready to be damaged. After this, he does another basic and easily dodgeable attack. Now we know another thing to look out for. Then he begins yet another new attack, but as it comes towards us, we know we can jump over it to avoid damage, see him turn blue, and hit him again. Now that we get comfortable with this, 3 new things come in to mix up the battle. First, during the falling sandbags, we can see that we can't stand around for long since a Mafia goon is charging at us. We need to dodge both him and the sandbags. This adds more tension onto the battle as the bags also give us a narrower space to jump between. After that comes the second challenge, the Mafia Ball. As it comes towards us with no way to jump over it, it causes us to think in the moment on what to do. As we look, we can see an indent that might be big enough to fit into. With hope, we jump in and might even actually use it to get up to the boss, giving us a way now to strike him down. The final part kicks in as he now repeats a projectile attack from before, but with a twist. And this attack sends projectiles that come straight at us on the ground, and others that bounce in an arc along the ground. Doesn't this sound familiar? It should, since it's taking 2 elements that we saw in Act 2 separately and combining them. The Mafia, who we can only attack or jump over, and the barrels that arced around to hit us. We take the skills we learned in Act 2 and apply them here to beat the Mafia boss after a few more attacks. When we win, it doesn't feel cheap. With all the chaos we avoided, it feels well deserved and gets the player ready for the next thing that's thrown at them. Now we head to Chapter 2, Act 6, Battle of the Birds, to square up for our next battle. This is where things get interesting, however, as your actions throughout the entire chapter determine who the boss you'll be facing at the end is. Your choices impact the aesthetic aspect of the battle, not the actual gameplay itself. While it is a little bit disappointing that the battles are identical, at least the aesthetic is different for each battle, allowing for a somewhat unique experience when you play through it. When we enter the boss's lair, we see whether it's DJ Grooves or the conductor. This is all dependent on how the player did in the acts prior. Whoever's acts granted them a higher score was the one who won the Bird Awards. They are also the one who will fight with you in the final battle. As we enter this reveal, albeit not super surprising, we are invited into a thematic room with whoever it is we're fighting. If it's DJ Grooves, the room is a moonset with accompanying dance floor. If it's the conductor, the room is a Wild West themed with a train car for the stage and a desert floor. After a bit of dialogue, the battle begins. By this point, you've played a decent chunk of the game, so your skills have definitely increased and the game takes notice. While the battle tends to be on the easier side, it still tests you on what you've learned throughout the entire arc, while still throwing in some curveballs to keep you on your toes. A fun little note is that the entire time the spotlight spotlight shines on the director, both to help you keep track of him as he moves around and to make it seem like they are the star of the show that you're going to overthrow. Now we can move on to the actual battle. The beginning attacks are relatively easy to dodge, but as with any battle, they get increasingly harder to dodge as time moves on. However, some attacks are actually mechanics that we've used throughout the chapter. For example, at one point in the battle you have to run from owls who are parading behind you, just as we've done in the past. This adds another element to that section of the fight, as now you can't retrace your steps and must be more accurate with your attacks. The same goes for when the bomb is attached and the timer appears. We have no way to get rid of the bomb, the clock is ticking, and the director still needs a thrashing. The battle just feels so energetic with every attack you're up against. The disco balls dropping, the volley of knives, the crashing of cars. It all feels so alive. But the best part of the fight is the break. This one moment where the director pauses the fight and has you sit down with him to talk. It reminds you that you're still friendly with this character, even though they're doing something wrong. It still helps us to like the character, even though we need to fight them. As the battle draws to a close, the player dodges a few more varied attacks that can grab the timepiece, finishing up a beautifully crafted duel between these creative minds. Now continuing on our boss rush, we hit the Chapter 3, Act 3 Toilet of Doom. Just like in Mafia Town, there's a sub-boss here in the Subcon Forest. When we arrive, we are in a circular arena where we immediately see our foe, a haunted outhouse, sitting in a vat of green ooze. While this situation sounds utterly ridiculous, the goofiness and craziness of this premise fits in perfectly for this lighthearted platformer. The battle starts with a basic standard of dodging, grabbing explosive cherries, and throwing them at the outhouse. It also mixes it up as the battle progresses with cages speeding at the player in all sorts of directions, forcing them to grapple to various bubbles to aid them. With the outhouse constantly being on the move, it causes the player to follow suit. This all leads up to the grand finale attack with the cherry bomb slamming down onto the stage, making the platforming come back into play. The player has a limited time to make it up and hit the outhouse before the bomb explodes for massive damage. Every hit feels super satisfying, especially since all these attacks feel fair when you see them, and there's just enough time to dodge them or to counteract them. While the boss probably won't be the most memorable, it does a good job being a place for the player to test out some new ideas and equipment gained throughout the chapter. All of this while keeping a few things the same as to not to overwhelm the player. This balance works perfectly as it keeps the fast-paced moving and platforming going, while taking the time to give the player an active objective they must complete. The combination of attacks you dodge isn't too many nor too little, but just enough to feel satisfied in completing yet another boss in the game. But this isn't the only subcon boss the player will deal with. Next up is Chapter 3, Act 6, Your Contract Has Expired. This is where we meet my personal favorite character of the game, Snatcher. After the outhouse boss, we end up with this level's main NPC as our foe in a battle for survival. After some witty dialogue, Snatcher steals and wears your hat for the entire battle. No hat tricks can be performed here, as it's now all up to the skill you've accumulated thus far. With a little more banter, the onslaught begins, and I don't take that word lightly, as Snatcher explains by breaking the fourth wall. Since he can't be harmed, the player is forced to begin running around the stage, dodging all the attacks that are thrown at them. Sky lasers and glass potion bottles cover the entire field as the player must bob and weave through the chaos. However, it's not long after a few volleys that we can pick up a bottle and toss it back at him. After some more dialogue, the battle ramps up in intensity. Snatcher's attacks become way more aggressive and are faster and tougher than ever. He'll even come into battle himself to trap you and attempt to snag a hit on you. While this battle may be intense, it doesn't overwhelm the player with negative stress. It feels challenging but ultra rewarding when you dodge that insane downpour of lasers, or when that swarm of bottles fly and you manage to maneuver through them all. Tough but fair, the way it should be. The fight then ends with the Hat Kid having to sign a final contract to leave the forest forever, but instead of signing it, she scribbles on it in crayon and changes the entire thing. After this very intense battle, it's nice to see the lightheartedness still peeking its head in. With a light chuckle and smile, this concludes our forest adventures. Now, there is another level in the game, Alpine Skyline, but it doesn't have a boss of any kind in it. Its final level is just stopping an illness from spreading, so we're just going to jump past this level to the final boss of the game. Here is the final level of the game. Long and behold, we are up against our final foe, Mustache Girl. This battle is a bit different than most, being that this battle comes after going through a final gauntlet of sorts. While not part of the battle, I wanted to mention this because this labyrinth adds much more intensity to the upcoming fight. It gives an actual sense of danger as you need to be constantly aware of your surroundings and be able to make some of the harder platforming in the game. After fighting our way through the fires around us, we end up in the throne room with an evil mustache girl sitting upon the throne. We get to engage and chat with her and she gives us the option to leave. The player can actually walk out, and if you do, a small slideshow plays of all of Fat Kid's friends saying they need her. With courage in her heart, she comes back to brawl. We challenge Mustache Girl to one last all-or-nothing gambit. This is where the fighting truly begins. We start off in the throne room with Mustache Girl teleporting around us. While it makes it harder to hit her, we aren't vulnerable by any means. As we run around and counterattack, we see a few familiar attack patterns from both Snatcher's battle and the Battle of the Birds. While these may be similar in style, they each have their own spin on aesthetic and dodging methods. It feels fast-paced, but again, nothing we can't handle. After a few volleys, things begin to drastically change. The entire cast of the game comes out to directly oppose Mustache Girl. She begins to get frustrated with everyone going against her, so she breaks an hourglass and wham! The entire setting is now changed, and we are inside of a void of darkness with glistening sparkles flying all around us. While the scenery has changed, the battle rages on, so you don't have time to rest. After a few moments, the world around the player turns on, and holy hell, we're in a vortex! The entire world explodes with color as the entire cast now surrounds the battle, cheering on the player to beat Mustache Girl. Her attacks now also have an aura of darkness surrounding them, showing both her attacks off easier and that she is truly the dark force we need to vanquish. Between her dark hourglass throws, teleportation, and beam of darkness, we have a dodging extravaganza. However, after a while it becomes impossible to hit Mustache Girl since she just teleports away whenever we get too close. Thankfully, we have the allies we've made along the way to help us beat her down. After a short cutscene between allies, the familiar Mafia ball is formed with the conductor at the helm. With this, the player smashes Mustache Girl's face in with the power of the Mafia. After a few quick bashes, she brings up a shield to protect herself, which means it's time to change strategies. A short dialogue with Snatcher takes place, and now we begin shield destruction. Exploding apples are now thrown to us so that we can blow away Mustache Girl's shield to score another hit. We do this song and deadly dance for a few more volleys before she gets furious, dodging her underground mole attacks along the way. In a fit of rage, she kills some of the generic cast that are cheering the player on, but this brings on a revelation. The cast begin to sacrifice themselves since they drop hearts that the player can use to beat Mustache Girl. Remaining cast members tell her they don't want her here, that she is the villain of this story and not the perfect hero she believes she is. With the final barrage of attacks, the player does one final performance of agility to take her down. I love how this battle gradually increases in intensity, instead of just being this ultra high stakes battle right from the get-go. This makes the player feel more and more determined as the battle progresses, rather than just having this sense of initial excitement that gradually tapers off. This fight can be quite the challenge as it puts most of the skills you've learned through the gauntlet, and as the fight progresses, most of the game's other elements shine through with the cast members all coming out of the woodwork to help us achieve victory. This gives a really satisfying sense of camaraderie as the curtain comes to close on a fantastic game. Thank you all for watching. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you've made it to the end of the video. If you liked the video, let me know and follow me so you can see more content like this in the future. And if you know how I can improve or what games I should cover, leave those in the comments down below. All my socials are linked in the description below, so if you feel like following me, feel free. I'm gonna go recharge for the next video, so take care everyone, and have a fantastic night. Bye!